Hey, welcome to this episode of the wholehealth Rob Carney Podcast with our guest Ryan Sprague. So Ryan is a psychology graduate and he's an avid plant medicine proponent, having worked in the medical cannabis field for the last 5 years. He's also a certified holistic lifestyle coach, a certified language coach, and the owner of Highly Optimized. So Highly Optimized is a company based on facilitating the healing journey of the individual while combining plant medicine, spirituality, and holistic living practices. So Ryan is a guy he's got a great heart. He's a great guy. He's a lot of fun to be around. He's got a lot of high energy. So we had a great conversation. We've had many great conversations in person and on the podcast. I'm excited to share this episode with you. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. All right, everyone, without further ado, I'd like to welcome Ryan to the podcast. Ryan, welcome aboard, my friend.
Thank you so much, Rob. Pleasure to be here. We've been talking about this for a while, so it's nice to have it happen, you know?
It absolutely is. And we did one together on your podcast a number of weeks ago, so we're coming full circle. So now it's the second conversation we're having together. Obviously, we've had many conversations in person as well. But I'd love to hear your story. I'd love for you to share your story with the people. How did you get into this world of health and wellness? How did you get into the coaching? How did you get into the plant medicines? How did you get into everything that you're doing now?
Well, I guess it would have all started, growing up, I was always, I always liked alternative things and liked to be a little edgy, I guess you could say. And then when I got into high school, I took a loving for psychology, and I knew that's what I wanted to major in college. But I knew that for sure, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do with it. I didn't really want to be a typical therapist because I didn't, even at that point, before I'd gotten into plant medicines and, gotten away from pharmaceuticals and everything like that, I knew that wasn't the only way, and I knew it wasn't the way that worked for me. And so what I did was I ended up going to Bridgewater State University for psychology. And when I graduated, or actually before I graduated, I was at HempFest one year, the Boston Freedom Rally, as I'm a huge cannabis aficionado and I love a good joint here and there. And so I was at Freedom Rally, and I heard, I actually forgot my sunglasses that day, and I'll tell you why this is important. But I have blue eyes, and if you have blue eyes and you forget your sunglasses, you're really just like blind, So I was like, oh, I can't really see a whole lot, and it was like a beautiful sunny day here in Boston, and so I heard someone yelling, "Who wants to make butter with me?" And I was like, well, I like making butter, so let's go see what this guy has to say. So I went over there. And it ended up happening to be this guy, Mike Fitzgerald, with his wife, Melissa. And they were giving out pamphlets for their new cannabis school that was coming to Quincy, right? And I immediately, this was like my first real experience with intuition, because I just had this feeling, I got to do that. I have to do it, and I had always loved cannabis since I was about, 17. Never was a big drinker, so that was kind of my thing I always went to, and I really loved the presence it gave me. At the time, of course, I didn't know that's what it was, but looking back on it now, that's what it was allowed to give me. Helped me with my anxiety a lot, and I believed in it. And so I ended up going to the orientation against all of my friends at that point, better wishes. They were all like, "You're going to get ripped off. This isn't real." I was like, screw it, I'm going to take the risk. So I went there, hit it off with them, joined their first semester, and they were a holistic healing center specializing in cannabis training.
Oh.
So through there, that was really my first intro into holistic health as a whole.
And
so
how old are you at this point?
I was 21. Yeah, 21. Yep. And so it was really cool. I mean, their holistic health educator they had there, she was growing her own sprouts. I mean, she was drinking apple cider vinegar. I mean, so I went, down the wormhole in holistic health, and I loved it. I loved how I felt. And at that point, I was already exercising, but, my version of exercising at that point was like going from 0 to P90X with no stretching or foam rolling. And as you can imagine, that presented some issues. So I needed some recovery methods. And so I learned a lot of them through that place, particularly meditation, mindfulness, even a little bit of breath work, although I didn't get really into that until later years. But so I did that for a while. I ended up interning under them. I ended up working for them for a little while. And then I ended up splitting ways with them when I was about 24. And right around that same time, medical dispensaries, they had gotten legalized in 2012, but they were now coming to fruition. And so I heard about one opening near my house, at Quincy, actually. And so I I just called every day. I found the guy's cell phone number through the white pages on online. I just I kind of backtracked and, found his number and ended up calling him. And, I just called him every day. And eventually he was like, all right, I'm just going to put you through to the hiring manager. And so I finally, I got in there and I was one of the first hires there. We opened October 5th, 2016. And it was a blast. I mean, that's really where my, journey as a health practitioner took off. And through that time, I learned a lot. And I was already cultivating cannabis at this point as well. I started doing that when I was at Grassroots. And I learned right away that I didn't like the synthetic type growing that a lot of people do. And I'm not dissing on it, but it just wasn't for me. I liked getting my hands in the dirt. I liked mixing my own soil up. So for me, I got really into organic regenerative agriculture. And at that point, it was just cannabis. Later on, it became agriculture as a whole. But so after I started mixing my own soils and, getting into that whole end of things, when I started at Ermont, the dispensary that I currently still work at technically, I ended up, giving I worked in the front lines. So I worked with patients and I'd help them with a lot of different things because they'd come in asking about cannabis. But what I noticed was a lot of times these people were like having a terrible diet. They didn't drink any water. They just, used cannabis from sun up to sundown, and they were, just kind of stuck. And they weren't doing it on purpose necessarily. They just didn't have the guidance of anyone else telling them like, hey, Mountain Dew isn't a liquid that you should be drinking. Hey, McDonald's, yes, it is matter, but it's not food, So,
Yep.
so I took a lot of pride, and I loved, and this is still my favorite part about the job, I love when people come in just expecting to get hopefully some good advice on what medicine to choose from in terms of cannabis, and they leave with like a catalyst to like their actual health journey, And so when I started doing that, I also started helping people grow. So I'd give people a lot of, grow tips in there. And I got this nickname that is so corny to me, but it kind of took off, and it was Weed Jesus, So long hair if anyone is listening to this and can't see. But so basically, then I started actually doing consulting because, a coworker of mine was like, Ryan, every single person that comes in here is wanting to grow their own. It's legalized in Massachusetts now to grow your own. Why don't you start a little side business where you help people consult and, help them set up their home grows? I figured, okay, that sounds fun. So I started doing that. And so that got me deeper into like just, empowering other people to grow their own food. Because when you learn how to grow cannabis, especially if you're, learning to grow really nice cannabis, chances are you're going to be able to grow some really nice tomatoes. You're going to be able to grow some really nice zucchini, etc. So, so that was a really, great thing for me. I, learned how to make raised beds and how to do hugelkultures, which for those of you who aren't garden people, is basically burying dead wood and spraying it with like a microbial inoculant, such as like an indigenous microorganism or an IMO. Not to get too deep into the world of Korean natural farming, but basically you're creating a constant source of decomposition so that you don't need to feed your plants any bottled nutrients. Those microbes in the soil have a constant source of decaying material that they can feed on, and they can make your nutrients from insoluble into soluble. So it was super fun. I love doing that. And then more recently, just to kind of jump ahead a little bit, I started really getting more into working with people one-on-one. And I started getting more into like psychology started coming back, full circle. And I started realizing a lot through a lot of plant medicine journeys and, a lot of just intuition and a lot of just sitting with myself and feeling how I feel. I really started to realize that I do have a purpose in helping people on their journey, on their life journey. And that plant medicine is one aspect of it. Spirituality is another aspect of it. Physical health is another aspect of it. And mindset is another aspect of it. And so that really got me thinking, how do I bring all these things together? Because, again, I'm working at a dispensary, but I feel like at the same time, just focusing on cannabis, although I love it, and just focusing on psychedelics, although I love them, that's just one integral piece of the full holistic health puzzle, So that really got me thinking, how do I bring all of these together in a fusion type way and make it fun for people? And so I remember it was this past December, my girlfriend and I were sitting in the Stop and Shop parking lot, right? Just hanging out. And we were kind of burned out. I think we had gone out the night before and partied because I love jumping around to live music. And so we were a little tired, and we were like, all right, cool. What should we get in here? We're going to grab some, vegetables, whatever, some water. And I was sitting there, and I was like, I really want to, I told her this, I said, I really want to make this fusion of all this stuff, but I want to have it have a cool name. And for some reason, I'm just the worst at making these names, but she is like the best. I mean, she is literally just so good at making these names. So I was like, I want it to be a play on words to, cannabis, but I want it to be overarching. I want it to be able to include other things. And so I'm sitting there and I'm trying to think of things, and I'm just coming up with absolute crap, and so she's like, what about highly optimized? And immediately I was like, boom, that's it. So at first I started highly optimized as an opportunity for people to optimize their cannabis experience through health, right? So, hey, if you drink more water, you're going to have a better cannabis experience. Hey, if you have mangoes before you use cannabis, it's going to increase your blood-brain permeability so that the cannabinoids and terpenes pass more easily through them, right? Things like that. But then I started realizing that a lot of people might just use cannabis at the end of the day to relax, and they have a whole day that they're not using it that they need information for. So that got me much more into like, okay, how do I like segue this into being, again, much broader and much more objective? And so around that time, I started, of course, doing highly optimized. I started posting a lot more on Facebook and making these long posts and just kind of letting my heart pour out into them. And I had a girl comment on one, and she was like, wow, this is amazing. I really got a lot of value from this. Do you have any other resources that I could, learn more stuff like this from? And so immediately, I don't know why this popped into my head, but I'm a huge podcast person. And so I thought vocabulary, Mark England is where I learned a lot of this stuff when I first got into podcasts 3 years ago, in terms of language and mindset and stuff like that. So I tagged him in the status. I was like, yeah, check him out. And so he messaged me about an hour later and was like, hey man, I really like what you wrote. I want to make this available to you. We're doing like kind of like a, not hush hush, but it's not really that big yet, vocabulary certification coaching program. Do you think this is something you would be interested in? And at the time, I'm like, I don't know, but my intuition just told me go for it. So I just went for it. And so I got into there. This is in January. I just completed that. I did HLC1 with Paul Check back in October. So it was like kind of strange. My intuition was just leading me much more towards a full entire coaching paradigm. And so that's kind of where I sit today, helping people out, doing one-on-one sessions. Currently I'm doing a 4-part series as a live stream through my buddy's festival called Quasar Festival, called Conscious Creation, where I'm taking people through some breath work, some affirmations or word spells, as I like to call them, and then a little bit of group story work, and then a nice little meditation at the end, just to kind of help everyone kind of learn how to become more parasympathetic dominant during such a crazy, insane time that we're all living through right now.
Absolutely, brother. Thank you for sharing that. I love everything about that journey. I love about the story. I love the following the breadcrumbs. I think that's a common trend that many of us in the world of health and personal development fall into, is like we see some breadcrumbs, we start following that trail, and eventually this little tiny trail now becomes a giant path. And at some point, it sounds like you're at the point where, and the same with me, is that we have so many options now. There's so many avenues to dive down. It's like it's a good problem to have, but at the end of the day, is we need to focus our energy, because there are so many things we can be doing. And so one thing I really liked about what you said about cannabis is that it can be used as it's a tool of a bigger picture. And that was my takeaway from what you said, and that's the way I view it as well. I don't use it all that often. I mean, I'd say maybe a few times a month at this point, simply because, again, I'm listening to my body. Sometimes my body's like, hey, let's do it. And usually I think I'm finding it would be more beneficial to me if I used a little bit more, simply because when I do use it, it's when I'm already feeling, oh, I need to ground myself. Oh, I need to get more present. Oh, I need to shift my mindset. And so I've been recognizing that whenever I feel the slightest urge of that, and again, I'm not smoking a lot. I'm taking a hit or two at most. Like, I don't need much. Exactly. And that's what I'm going for. And so I think that was something that I've really learned, is that obviously in our younger years, I can speak for myself, and I think a lot of people, we tend to go all in. It's like, oh, well, I'm going to smoke 16 bowls in 2 days or whatever. It's just, I'm going to get high to get high. Yeah. And that's where it turns into a drug. It's
Yeah,
not a medicine anymore. And I think
exactly.
it's just like anything, though. I mean, you can over-exercise. Your exercise can go from your medicine to your poison. You can break your
Hmm.
body down, as we've both talked about in our own experiences. We've done that. Years with the
Yeah,
P90X type of stuff is we've worn our bodies down because it wasn't the right dosage. And
yeah.
so something that I really like about the cannabis is that it helps me shift my mindset, as I said, and it helps me think in a different line of thoughts. It helps me ground myself. So I'd like to hear, what are the common reasons why people come to you for why they want to use it? Why do they want to use this tool, and do they get the results they're looking for?
So I really like this question. This is a really good question. And I would find that people come to me for a plethora of different reasons, but generally it's because they use cannabis, they love it, but it was working better in the past and now it is not working so well. And that could be for a myriad of different reasons. The number one I see though is that they're overusing it. And so before anyone thinks I'm going to get in a soapbox, I used cannabis every day for 15 years. And I never felt like it was getting overboard because I would only use it at night. I wouldn't, like yourself, I'd take a hit or two. And it would just calm me down, help me, play guitar and just get creative. But then I had an intuitive feeling. I went to Las Vegas for MJ BizCon this past year. And it was the biggest cannabis convention in the world. It's ridiculous. And just went overboard out there. It was just, like waking up and, I'm never like a wake and baker. I just don't like it. My anxiety doesn't I can actually, so I can use CBD dominant cannabis in the morning. I actually do like that because that barely does anything notably different to my mind. It just helps my body become less inflamed. So that's something I can do. But that being said, I mean, when you're in Vegas with all your cannabis buddies and you're tapped into that network, I mean, we're going to dispensaries all day, we're getting free invites to party. It just was crazy. So when I got back, I actually took a 60-day break, which I have never done before, like completely no CBD weed, nothing, for 60 days. And it was just an intuitive feeling. And so that's what I find with people that come see me a lot is that they might be getting that intuitive feeling, but maybe not know what intuition even is. They might know it and not just be nervous because this is what works for them for, for their pain, for their emotional pain, for any type of dis-ease that they're feeling in their body or mind or, emotional state or spiritual state, but they don't know what they're going to replace it with. Right. And I use those words, carefully because they think it's going to be something that they replace it with. But really, what I always try to instill in them is that this is happening for you, not to you. This feeling of cannabis not working for you in the same way it did is happening for you because, like you said, cannabis is a tool, but it's not the actual person using the tool, And so if you want to be able to make your cannabis use the most efficient, I guess you could say, you want to make sure that you as a person are not using it to cover up something, and that's, I know, what a lot of people using cannabis are doing it for. And, again, it's not innately a bad thing. I did that for a long time too. And it's not like you can't use cannabis to help you through some states. But if you're smoking from sun up to sundown and you're feeling anxious all day during that time, your body's trying to tell you something. Your body is trying to tell you that, hey, you might need to meditate and actually sit in those thoughts for a while. Because, those feelings of discomfort, the more you just cloud them over, you're not using it as a medicine. You're using it more as an intoxicant.
Yep. And it comes down to escapism. And I think that's the thing that many of us do is we use a lot of these great tools as a form of escapism. And then, as you just said, the longer you bury this stuff down, the more it brews up there, the bigger that storm gets, and eventually it has to come out. And that's the whole midlife crisis thing that people deal with because they've been suppressing all these emotions, all these, something's telling me and that's the intuition. Oh, make a change. But it's like, no, I can't because of X. I can't because of Y. I can't do that because it helps me do this. And we're just fighting that internal intuition that is our guiding force, that, as you said, and I think I can speak for myself and you, is that intuition is why we're here today. We followed our intuition, which led us to the breadcrumb trail, which led us to taking the next breadcrumb. And I think that people are so out of touch with that intuition. And I think a lot of it comes from, as you were saying earlier, people aren't drinking water. People think drinking Mountain Dew and having McDonald's is a meal. That's not a meal. That is poison. So I think that by getting more into our bodies and out of our heads, and not even getting out of our heads, but finding that balance in between the
Of
two of
course.
them. I think that's a very important piece, and I think that's where the intuition can actually shine in getting people
Yeah.
into that parasympathetic state, as you're saying. Because if we're in the state of sympathetic nervous system, which is a fight or flight, we're in a mode of stress, inflammation. We don't our intuition's not even going to be listened to. We're not even going to be able to hear it because we're so focused on the immediate survival mechanisms that our body's producing, because we're putting ourselves in a state of we're ingesting poison, whether it be Mountain Dew, tons of sugar, tons of alcohol, whatever the case is. And then we're also using cannabis as an escapism to avoid actually coming on with these things head on. So
Yeah.
it's an interesting paradigm that it's just like anything. It can be either a medicine or a poison.
Yeah, I agree. And, you know, what you're also not doing in that is you're also not respecting the plant, you know, because
Yes.
cannabis is a very spiritual healing plant, you know, and a teacher plant. But if you're not respecting it in the right ways, you know, I mean, for lack of a better term, it's not going to be as bad as psychedelics if you don't respect those. But generally speaking, you know, you're not going to get the most out of it, and you're going to do yourself and the plant a disservice, you know. And I think this comes from a lot of people thinking that they're a body that has a soul, but really we're a soul that has a body, you
Mm.
know. So that's one of the most important realizations I, you know, tend to kind of push people towards is like, hey, you know, I think you're much bigger than what you feel, you know,
Mm.
and or much bigger than what you think, because we have a soul, you know, a mind state and a body, you know. And I think a lot of people, they put their mind in the driver's seat and the soul takes a back seat, when really our intuition should be our guiding, you know, our guiding principle through life, and our mind and our body should be tools to help facilitate that growth, you know.
Yes.
And so that's a lot of the reason why, you know, one of the new things I work on now, as I get people, you know, the first step is mostly like, okay, what are you doing? How is it working? How is it not working? Kind of just hearing people out. And then normally where I go from there is into the story work, you know, and into like what I call your fixed mindset story.
Mm.
Because a big part of this is determining whether or not you have a growth or fixed mindset. You know, so growth oriented people feel like their attributes, their talents, whatever, can change depending on how hard they work. Whereas fixed mindset people believe that their innate qualities, their talents, you know, their attributes are fixed upon birth. You know, so think of like IQ, you know, like, oh, that's my IQ, I can't do anything about it, you know. And that's so false. And then one of the things I'm trying to teach people is that it's not uncommon to think like that. Everyone is going to have some areas of their life where they have growth mindsets, some areas where they have fixed mindsets, and that's fine. But the more you work on the stories, right, which control those mindsets, that's where you're really going to get a lot of the, you know, big workout. Because like you were saying, the more we push everything down, all those intuitive feelings, that's a story we're telling ourselves. Oh, I can't do XYZ because I don't have the talent to do that, or I can't get up on stage and talk in front of 100 people because I have anxiety. Those are all stories that we tell ourselves about ourselves, and a lot of the times they're running unconsciously in the
Yes.
background of our lives. And you know, that's 100% what it was for me. And for me, the catalyst to that was cannabis and was psychedelics. But it came to a point where, you know, luckily it never came to the point of psychedelics, because I got that memo real quick. But with cannabis, you know, it took a while, where after a while I was coming home at night and I would use cannabis, and but I didn't really know why I was like, I just had this epiphany one day, where it was actually after Vegas, where I came home one night and I was like, do I really need to use cannabis tonight? Like, because the other thing I was feeling is that I was using THC too close to bed, you know,
Mm.
where, you know, if I use it about an hour and a half before bed, amazing sleep. And I have the Aura ring now to prove it. But if I use it too close to bed, it actually interrupts my deep sleep cycles.
Mm.
And so then I wake up feeling groggier. I, you know, kind of have that feeling like you feel when you wake up after eating an edible, you know, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was just that, like, I had felt that hundreds of times, but I had never actually thought about like, hey, what do I do to actually fix this? And again, that was a story. Well, I'm this cannabis guy and I got to use cannabis every day because I work in the industry and this is my, and that was silly, because what justice am I doing to any of my clients by trying to push through my own intuition by making them think, oh, you can use cannabis every day? You
Definitely.
can, if it works for you, but if it doesn't, then stop, you know?
I agree. And what I like about the stories too, which is always interesting, is that I think we, generally speaking, we often think that people are projecting their ideas onto us. They think that we're this type of person. They think we're that type of person. But at the end of the day, it's a story we tell ourselves. At the end of the day, we can either create a story that we want, or we can make assumptions. Oh, this
Hmm.
person thinks I'm that. That person thinks I'm this. I need to be that. And I think that's something that just takes time and maturity to recognize that that's not how life works. We're not the stories that other people say we are. It's what we choose through the stories we tell ourselves and the actions we take. And I think that's where something like meditation is so helpful. Things like cannabis can be so helpful. Tai Chi, hiking, walking barefoot, things that bring presence. I think that's where we really are able to release that stress and really look at our stories without bias. And obviously,
Yeah.
we have some sort of bias instinctively because we want to protect ourselves. Our ego wants to protect itself. But by doing things that are relieving that stress, by grounding ourselves and making presence, we can really look at these stories we're telling ourselves and it's like, wow, am I that person? Am I the we guy? Like, do I want to be known as a we guy? Like, or do I want to be known as like this person? And it really gives us an opportunity to check in with ourselves. I think that's where I could see affirmations written on your board there. I think that's where something like affirmations can go very well with recreating your story. Because at the end
Yeah.
of the day, is we could be someone that's like, if we're always saying, oh, I can't afford this. I can't afford that. Oh, I'd like to do that, but I can't afford it. That's a story we're telling ourselves. And that was something that I told myself for years, was the I can't afford this story. Was the I don't have the money to. My friends were like, oh, let's go out to this and do that. I'm like, no, I want to, but I can't afford it. And the fact of the matter is I could. The money was in my bank account. I could
Yeah.
have. I was just choosing that was not a high enough priority. But instead of wording it that way, I became the story of like, I don't have money. I can't afford that. And then it wasn't until I went to HLC2 that was exposed to me on a silver platter. We did an exercise, and I had a big aha moment that I was like, holy shit! I've been telling myself I can't afford this for the past 2-3 years. When it all stemmed from when I was working in LA and we were traveling so much and I was making not that much money. I was living in an expensive part. And so even when I came back, things weren't as expensive as living in LA, but I still had that story and I kept that story. And then it wasn't until I went to HLC2 that I was like, wait a second, this is something that I just created in my mind. That's not even true anymore. I've just held on to it. And I think that's a challenge that many people face is that they create a story and they cling to it because it becomes a sense of identity. Just like someone
Yeah.
who's constantly in pain. The pain might not even be there anymore. You might just be imagining, because even myself, from when I tore this muscle in my back, there's still times where I'm doing, like yesterday, I was doing some yard work and I started feeling a sensation in that area. And it took me a second. I was like, is this real or am I just imagining? Because in the past, this would have caused pain. And then as
Hmm.
soon as I recognized that, the pain went away. So it's
Yeah.
like, how much of this is actually real and how much is this just the story we've created for ourselves? And the power of the mind is no joke. And that's what I like about the affirmations, the story work, the meditation, the breath work, and the cannabis, and all these different tools, is that it shows how powerful the mind is. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on the power of the mind and all that too.
Yeah, well, one of the things I always, and I got this from Mark England, so I can't say it was me, but one of the things I always start out every coaching call with is I ask people what abracadabra means.
Hmm,
And, if
good.
you're like me, then you probably say magic or, magician or something like that. But it's actually Aramaic and it translates to with my word, I create.
Hmm,
And this is exactly where affirmations come in because when I bring on affirmations, you have two groups of people. One that's like, oh, I love affirmations. And then usually the more muscly guys are like, bro, I don't need to like that. That's stupid. All right. I'm like, listen, our words are vibration. And where attention goes, energy flows. And so what we put out, we get back. And so what affirmations are meant to do is they're meant to put out to the universe what you want or what you already have past tense, right? So that you can believe it more. And also, who knows what else happens, right? Exactly. You can look into Joe Dispenza's research if you want to look more into that. But, just to not trigger anyone, what it does for you is it helps redo your own personal stories on things such as I don't have enough money, I have anxiety, I have depression, all those kind of stories you make. And also you were talking about projections. They made me feel so upset. He makes me feel like I'm not worthy. All these things. I always tell people, for like the he's not worthy thing, take out he, put I make me feel like I'm not worthy, because at the end of the day, it's all a reflection of you. And it's like one of my favorite quotes, which is in the cave you fear is the treasure you seek, because really it all is about going inward. And what I realized on my own journey for a while was that I wasn't going inward. I was at a job that I didn't like, and I didn't feel appreciated at. And so at the end of the day, I would come home, I would use cannabis unknowingly. This is unconscious to me. I would use cannabis to numb the fact that I wasn't happy. And then I would do things that I thought were putting me ahead, like listen to podcasts, whatever. But at the end of the day, all I was doing was really gaining a lot of information, but not doing anything with it.
Yep.
So I needed to act, I needed that action. And so that's what, getting more into my intuition allowed me to do, is realize like, hey man, this is all well and good. You're not going home and put on Netflix every night or anything, but you're still not doing what you should be doing.
Definitely.
At this. You're in that, like you're telling yourself that story once again of, oh, I need more information. I don't know enough yet.
Yep.
I'll listen to, 10 more podcasts, then I'll be ready. And it's like, at some point you just need to go out and do it, because the big realization I had is you're not going to help anyone sitting in your damn room. You know what I mean? And you're not going to help anyone being afraid of how you look on camera. Mm-hmm. You're not going to help anyone being afraid if someone thinks your post is dumb. Like, Definitely. Who cares? Like at the end of the day, like, I'm going to do what I was put here to do, as I'm sure, I know you're in the same exact boat, and you're never going to please anyone. But at the same time, if you speak to everyone, no one's going to listen to you. You have to be okay with some people not liking what you're saying. Mm-hmm. And that was a big thing for me, because I have anxiety. So, rather I have anxious, periods,
Yep.
And I think everyone does, but that was a big, big realization for me, is like, you know what, I'm just going to do what I'm going to do. And if people don't like it, then, hey, you know what, those people weren't meant to interact with me, and hopefully they find help in the place that's going to, resonate with them.
Totally. I love it. And two things I want to touch on from what you just said. So there was one, I think it was Dr. Joe Dispenza in his Becoming Supernatural book. I'm pretty sure there was an exercise that he had you write down the initials of someone that triggers you or makes you annoyed. And it was like, write down all the things that make them annoyed or make you annoyed that they do. And it's fun. And then he writes them down, and then he was like, all right, now how many of those are things that you do? And I just sat there like, that one, every single one of the things that annoyed me in that person were things that I do. Like one of them was like, they don't clean up the kitchen sink. And sometimes like I'm good about that, but sometimes I left stuff in there. Oh, they made a mess in this room. Oh, but I also made a mess in a different room. So what's the difference? So it was like, once I really thought about it, I was like, wow, everything that I was getting annoyed at that person for were things that I was doing. It was projecting my annoyance onto them because they were things that I was doing. And that was to me, it was like, wow, I cannot really get annoyed at other people. I just got to do the damn thing. And the other point that you made me think of is what you're saying about, we always think, oh, one more of these, one more book, one more certification, one more whatever. And what I've really found lately is that it's a common trap that us entrepreneurs, especially personal development entrepreneurs, fall into, is that we are always trying to do more. Like you said, oh, I could be listening to a podcast right now. I have to be doing something to get ahead. And it's something I found myself getting into, that I was just at some point just piling on information that I wasn't even absorbing anymore, simply for the fact that I had to get ahead. I had to stay ahead. I had to keep progressing. I had to have that growth mindset. I had to keep go. But at some point I burned myself out. And there was about 2 weeks that I was just like, I don't want to do anything, because I was going at an unsustainable rate. And then during those 2 weeks I like went off social media. I just took a break. I was like, I can't, I'm so fried. And it really made me realize that there are periods that it's okay to do that. Mm-hmm. But even if you love it, which I do love it, you can't do that forever. And it's really about just finding that balance. And it really comes down to a lot of these tools we talk about really help you find that presence and help you step back. And it is so important. I tell everyone, if you're doing nothing, put your phone on airplane mode at night. Do not, I won't even get into EMFs, but let's not have you check your, right now. I got some, I got the Aries Tech chip right here.
Oh, nice. Hell yeah.
So the thing is that it's so important to disconnect. Even yesterday, I'm making a rock garden, at my parents' house here. So there's a piece of property. I just moved back into my parents during this whole quarantine craziness,
Mhm.
and there's a piece on their land that's just been unused since they moved in like 18 years ago. And so I decided I'm starting to rake things up, get all the sticks out. I'm going to build a rock garden so I can do some rock stacking. And
Right.
in that, because there's a lot of twigs and sticks and stuff, I made a little fire pit there yesterday. I just turned off my phone for about 2.5, 3 hours. I smoked a little cannabis. I
Yeah.
enjoyed myself. I became present. I did some meditation, some yoga, built a fire. And I cannot tell you how much better I feel today. Like that was the medicine I needed. And it was just disconnecting. It wasn't trying to be productive. It wasn't trying to get ahead. It wasn't trying to learn more. It wasn't trying to do more. It's just being. And I think that's a part that in our go, go, go society, we have forgotten about being. And I think that's where everything you've talked about, from the stories we tell ourselves, I'm a hard driven entrepreneur. Yeah, that's true. But it doesn't mean you can't take breaks either.
Yeah.
I'm an anxious person. Well, maybe you should do some things that bring you presence.
Yeah.
It's just being. And I think that's a part that we've lost in our society is we need to be more. We don't have to do everything. We don't have to get all these certifications. And I think that's where the whole PhD thing, piled higher and deeper, as they say, it's,
I was just gonna say.
yeah, you got to get some field experience, because you can
Yeah.
always be learning. And just like they say, it's like, would you rather have a surgeon who joined the army and who's been on the field for the past 8 years, or someone who's been studying books for 8 years? Like, I'll take the freaking army surgeon any day. And so
Absolutely.
it's a crazy world we live in, but I'd love to hear some things that you do to bring presence to your life, things that you use to disconnect, to ground yourself and just recharge the battery.
Yeah. Well, a couple things that I brought out of what you were just saying. Number one is another one of my favorite quotes, which is, it's called the present because it's a gift. So I had to put that one in there. And number two, about the, being more. My last medicine journey, it was just pure laughter the whole time, because, it's funny. I've gone on, my fair share of medicine journeys, but this one was especially awesome. Only because it was the first time where I did one where I really, like, my whole entire being was just like, yes, you're doing it. You're listening. You're intuitive. You're really being good. And so I just had these hilarious, like, moments where I was just doubled over in laughter the whole time, right, with my girlfriend. And one of them was like this realization. And I just remember screaming out, like, human beings, not human doings. Now I get it, and it was like so funny, I had to comment on that. But in terms of what I do to, help my body recharge, because I'm in the same exact boat where I almost for a while was holding on a pedestal if I got burned out. Like, oh, I did enough because now I'm really spent, But at the end of the day, if I spend over 100% of my energy today, then tomorrow I'm already at a deficit, because tomorrow I have 80 or 70% energy available, right? So if I'm talking to someone tomorrow who had a really traumatic experience and I'm coaching them and I can't bring my 100%, I'm not doing them or myself a due justice, So that was something that, again, just in the last, like, really 6 months to a year has really solidified in me.
One thing that comes up, I just want to, while I'm thinking about it, is that I was just reading this book called Stillness is the Key by Ryan Holiday. And one of the passages in there, he says, protect the gift. And that's something that to me just has struck me and resonated so deeply, that we have a gift. And it's exactly what you just said. If we're burning out the gift, that's not protecting the gift. That's doing ourselves and everyone around us a disservice. So that's been a phrase I've been reminding myself of lately when I find myself overexerting, trying to do too much, is protect the gift, protect the gift. Because if we don't protect the gift, we're not helping anyone. We're destroying our gift, and we're not able to give that gift to the rest of the world. So I just want to share that as you continue.
I love that point, and it's really, I know it's looking at life the Buddhism way, which is, what is this trying to teach me? So, like, my anxious mind, instead of being like, oh, I have anxiety and telling the story, what is it trying to teach me? Maybe it's teaching me that in this go round of 3D incarnation, I need to focus more on being intuitive and give myself more time to be still and be, and that's why my obsession now is inner work, and, I had done meditation. Like, I took a transcendental meditation course with my girlfriend about 3 years ago now, actually. And it was awesome. It was amazing. And I got a lot out of it, but there was still a lot that I wasn't doing. Like, yes, I was meditating twice a day for 20 minutes at a time, but where was I really going with that? And was I just like, okay, when is this over? Like, that kind of was what was happening.
What was the intention?
Yeah, exactly. And so it wasn't until I went to HLC1 and learned all the inner work modalities they have, like all the actual individual chakra work and everything. That's when I really started getting into inner work. And that's when, I found breath work. And breath work is my favorite. And I'll tell you why. Simply because I'm a very extroverted, energetic, lively person, right? So meditation right off the bat, like, trying to meditate just full on, I'm kind of just like sitting there, like, I want to go jump around and ride my bike and, do pull-ups and, just whatever I want to do. Right. So breath work really, like, I'll usually do 3 rounds of Wim Hof. Then I'll do a little bit of like breath of fire. And then I'll do some box breathing at the end of it. And then after that, I feel like I've got my little adrenaline fixed for the moment, and I can meditate. And I can really get out and meditate, And yeah, and so I'll usually wake up in the morning and I'll get right out of bed. I don't let myself like hang in bed and just like, and that's like, one of the things I've been tuning into with everything I do. Again, with the cold exposure, right? Like with cold showers, I started doing cold showers every day 2 years ago. And I told myself when I did it that I wouldn't sit in the shower while it was, because I do hot and then I go to cold at the end. So I wouldn't sit in there and just ponder like, oh, I got to go to cold soon. I just do it. Just do it. Don't think about it. Just do it. Right. So that's something I try to do with everything, I do. I try to bring that same presence to everything I do. So I get out of bed. I immediately go to Wim Hof breath work. I do 3 rounds of that. I do my breath of fire. I do my box breathing. I do a 15 or 20-minute meditation. And then I get right into, warming up, stretching, do my workout. And then I usually fast. If I'm doing a big workout, I'll have like usually a banana or something like that, but with some almond butter. But I love that organic Reese's feel, So yeah, I usually do that. And then at the end of the night, I found that my end of night routine is even more important. And now that I have the Aura Ring, I'm really learning a lot of stuff, because like last night, for instance, right, I was, doing a lot of work at night, right? I was doing a lot of, I don't know if you know about somatics and pandiculation, but it's like this, it's amazing. I have my, weird body issues and stuff. Like you were saying, you tore the muscle in your back. I've had strange things that just, nicks and dings and whatever. So I've been learning about this thing, pandiculation, because I usually get massaged every week, but now I can't get massaged because this whole thing, which is again, a gift, because now I'm realizing, oh my God, I can save a lot of money and not feel burdened by having to get a massage. I can choose to get one, but I can learn how to heal myself, anything. And so this pandiculation, it's really just training your muscles, retraining your muscles on where they should be sitting in like your body. So when your muscles get tense and they, get injured or whatever, they forget where they're really supposed to be in terms of your body, in terms of tenseness. So what pandiculation does and what somatics do is actually retrain your muscle of, oh, this is where I'm supposed to sit in the body. This is how tight I'm supposed to be. This is my baseline. So I've been doing a lot of that. And so last night I got carried away because, like you were saying, being this mindset, like it's easy to just be like, well, I know it's 1, but I could, I don't have this podcast till 11:30, so I could stay up till 2 and get another hour of pandiculation in, and I'm sure I'll feel better tomorrow. But what ended up happening was I ended up sacrificing my sleep quality to get pandiculation. And if you sacrifice your sleep, how much are you really recovering? So it's like, I'm like having all these light bulb moments, like, that's another way that my mind is running the show and not allowing my intuition. So it's a daily battle,
Definitely.
But that's why the inner work is so important. That's why breath work, meditation, affirmations, cold exposure, I even consider that inner work, honestly.
Totally.
It's story work. All of that is so important. And it's like, I heard this great quote, and I'll butcher it, so I'll just kind of give the synopsis of it. But it was basically that inner work is like it's like a bank account. It's you add to it every day. But if you start to spend it, right, because every day you're spending it too with what you do throughout the day. So if you forget to put money in there and you keep spending money, you're going to go negative. And so it's an everyday thing. And that's what I should, have to, like just suggest and, put an emphasis on to everyone listening, is that inner work is great, but it's not going to work if you only do it once or twice a week. It's an everyday thing. And trust me, this annoys the hell out of me because, like I said, meditation is not an easy thing for me, but I can't argue with the results it gives me.
Cool. Yeah, and one thing I really liked what you said about the cold showers, and this applies to everything, is that we waste so much mental energy saying, "Oh, I have to do this. Oh, when I do this, oh, I'm going to do this later." If we just did all those things that we said, how much more energy would we have? And it's something that even myself too, and I consider myself to be pretty good with the cold showers. There's still days where I do that same thing where I'm just like, do I have to take a cold shower right now? Oh, it's gonna be so cold. But then as soon as I just go, I catch myself, I'm like, Rob, just get in the damn cold shower. And I get in, and it's not that bad. And then I'm like, oh, this is actually nice. And so there's times that even with like editing my last podcast that I just finished this morning, that took me 30 minutes. And I've been putting it off for the past 2 days. And it's just been in the back of my head like, oh, I'm supposed to release that podcast on Tuesday. I'll just wait till Tuesday. How much mental energy did I waste on something like that? So one thing I like that you just said, it's a constant battle. It's a constant, and I don't want to say battle, it's a constant training. We're constantly training and reprogramming our brains because we've been conditioned either through outside sources or our own, consciously or unconsciously, to have these inhibitions, to have these feelings of whether it's unworthiness or have these feelings of that challenge that we're making. Eddie, our mutual friend Eddie, has said turning anthills into mountains. And I really like that. And we tend to do that. At least I tend to do that. And I'm getting better at it. But something like editing the podcast, I probably thought about it for an hour total the past 3 days. It took me 30 minutes. That's an hour of wasted time. And same thing with the cold showers. If I do that every day for even 2 minutes over the course of a month, that's an hour. That's an hour wasted on just like, oh, I should do this. Oh, I don't want to do this. And so what I really like about what you just said is that it's a constant journey. It's a constant growth that we do every single day. We train ourselves. And that's how I've reprogrammed my thought on movement as well. I'm not working out, I'm training. And so sometimes my training is working in, doing Tai Chi, going for a walk, doing some yoga. That's my training for the day. That's what my body is telling me to do. I don't want to get injured again. That sucked. I couldn't lift weights for over 2 years. I don't want to ever do that again. So I'm going to train every day. I'm going to train physically with my movement. I'm going to train with my personal development, with my mindset, by putting myself in situations like the cold showers that force me to reconcile with that inner wimp inside of me that's like, oh man, like you don't have to do that. Like, and so I think that it's very important to have that mindset. This is something you do every day. This is something we're going to be doing every day for the rest of our lives. So you better choose something that you enjoy doing. And the other thing is too, I think that people have this idea that things like meditation, like cold showers, and like you said earlier, it was a God-given gift. It is what we were born with. We can't change that. Do you expect to pick up a guitar and play the most difficult song? No, it's going to take practice, just like meditation takes practice, just like affirmations, story work takes practice, meditation, cold showers, whatever the piece is, exercise, movement, it all is practice. And I think that that's a very important mindset shift, that these are all skills. These are all come with experience. These aren't just you're born with it or you're not. Obviously, some people are more physically gifted, like LeBron James is the best athlete in the world, I would say. And so I can't be LeBron James, but I can be the best version of Rob Carney. I can do whatever I can with my gifts, and I can make the best version. I'm not trying to be an NBA player. That's not my gift. That's not my purpose. So I'd just love to hear, as we've come full circle here, any final messages, any thoughts you'd love to leave with our listeners, and just what you're up to.
Yeah, I think I know that what I want to leave this with is the fact that I think a lot of people think that they have to find something they're passionate at, but really I think what you should do is you should just be and encompass passion. Because saying that you want to find something you're passionate at, oh, well, I'll start something when I find my passion. That's essentially saying that you're waiting for fear to take a back seat. And what I'm sure as I know, with the cold showers and everything, there's always fear, but you just get better at pushing through it. And the most successful people are not these God-given people that have these gifts you don't have. They're just the people that learned how to hack the system at fighting through the fear.
They're also not people just sitting there waiting for inspiration to come to them or waiting for that passion to come for them. They're creating it daily.
Exactly. Be that passion, and that's the most important thing I can tell all the listeners is that, bring passion into every single thing you have to do in life. If you have to wash the dishes, be the most passionate dishwasher you can. And I promise you that if you do that, like say if you're at a job, right, and you're washing dishes or whatever, right, and you be the most passionate dishwasher, someone's going to notice that, and it's going to get you to the next step. And worst case scenario, it's just going to help you be happier in the process of washing dishes. It's literally a win-win situation. And so that's one of the things that I know I try to do and again, every day is not perfect, but anytime I create those neural grooves in my brain to say, hey, I notice that right now I'm not being that passionate person I want to be. Oh, light bulb moment, let's go be more passionate, So it's not about getting it right all the time. It's just about creating a new neural groove, like a path in the forest that after a while is like a clear indicated path. It's not just like a path you kind of have to walk over branches and stuff. Eventually it's a clear path, and you just know how to take it. Oh, that's that voice coming in again. Okay, go to that path. So go to that path, find your path.
Beautiful, man.
Yeah.
I love it. And one thing I just want to conclude with is that, as you've heard from both of our stories, everyone listening, is that there's going to be stumbles. There's going to be moments that are challenging. And those are all what I view as, I don't even say failures anymore. I just say learning experiences, challenges, obstacles that we learn from, however you want to phrase it. These are opportunities to grow. And the fact of the matter is, most successful people have failed more than they've succeeded because they try a lot of things. They figure out what they like. They figure out what works and what doesn't. And if we're living in fear, as you said, waiting for that perfect opportunity to come to us, it's not going to come because we're not creating a good environment for it to happen. We need to put ourselves out there. We need to be vulnerable. We need to try things, because when we're putting our best forward, the universe is like a boomerang. You throw out good energy is going to come right back to you. Yeah, there might be some shrapnel that comes along the way that you might get hit by some quote unquote bad things.
Yeah.
But again, those are just the obstacles, the rocks that we're hurdling over the top to the mountain. So, brother, I appreciate you. I love everything you're saying. Where can people find you to learn more?
So Instagram is definitely my biggest handle right now. It's where I spend the most time. I try not to spend too much time, but that's where I'm, the easiest to reach. And so it's highly, HIGHLY _ and then optimized, OPTIMIZED on Instagram. And then also I have a business Facebook page under the same name. I have a YouTube channel with all my videos up on there, so come check those out. And if you want to book any one-on-one coaching sessions, or you just want to chat, hit me up on Instagram. I'm always around. I love talking, if you guys haven't noticed.
And where's your podcast? Because we've done an episode on there. You've got a great podcast. I'm going to listen to a few more episodes the next few days. So where do people find your podcast?
So it's on Spotify under Highly Optimized. And so it's kind of funny. I always forget that I have a podcast too. It's one of those things I wanted to do for so long. And yeah, I'm really proud of it. It's awesome. I've had you on, Rob. I've had our buddy Eddie on, our mutual friend Eddie. I'm going to have Jordan on. I just had Mark England on there, which is going to be an amazing episode. That's going to get released, I believe, this Wednesday or Thursday. Yeah, a bunch of cool stuff. I just put an emphasis on all the people that are living a life beat to their own drum, and pretty much try to take their tips and tricks and, allow people to get the most out of it so they can manifest their dreams in this reality. So yeah, come check me out. Connect.
Beautiful, brother. Well, thank you for being here. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And Ryan, I'll see you soon, my friend.
Thank you, brother. Peace.
All right, everyone. Peace.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Whole Health Rob Carney Podcast with our guest, Ryan Sprague. So you can find Ryan at highly _optimize on Instagram, as well as on his Facebook page, YouTube, and podcast. So him and I did an episode on his podcast fairly recently, so I'd love for you to check that one out as well, and just hear more of what Ryan has to share, because he's got a lot of great knowledge. He has a lot of fantastic tips on Instagram, so highly recommend checking him out there. And this podcast is brought to you by our superfoods, Purium and Mushroom Revival. So when we're utilizing superfoods, what does superfoods mean? Essentially what it means is highly nutrient-dense foods. So as opposed to potatoes, which have a lot of calories but not so many nutrients, things like spirulina, wheatgrass, medicinal mushrooms, these are a great way to get a lot of these essential vitamins and minerals into our body without having to eat an excessive amount of calories. So by partnering with companies like Purium and Mushroom Revival, It is my way of bringing highly nutritious food to your doorstep. It's delivered right to you. You can order right online, and you'll use the code wholehealth to save $50 on your first order with Purium and 15% on your every order with Mushroom Revival. So I'd love for you to check those out. You can find those on my website, on my Instagram, anywhere that is Whole Health Connections, you'll be able to find those superfoods. And then I also recently partnered with a group called Aries Tech. Now, Aries Tech protects us from the unseen. And what does that mean? With things like Wi-Fi, 5G, 4G, all these different electromagnetic frequencies known as EMFs, where they're circulating around us in this digital grid that we've created, which is incredibly powerful for using the internet, for connecting with people, but it does have some harmful effects on the human body and down to a DNA cellular level. So by using Aries Tech, it's basically a transforming chip. So it transforms some of these chaotic waves of EMFs into something that's more digestible by the body. So it's basically a little chip, or it's a card like the size of a credit card that just slips into your wallet, and you keep it on you, and it's going to help reduce some of the effects of these electromagnetic frequencies. Obviously not removing all of it, otherwise our devices wouldn't work, but we have so much power coming in that it's more than our devices really need to be functioning at a high level. So you can check that out at ariestech.com, and you can use the code wholehealth to save 10% on your every order as well. So thank you for listening to this episode. Please tune in to future episodes, and have a great day.